If you are into your discipline and you want to be a professional, I'm going to be behind you 100%. If you're not showing that level of effort, I'm sorry, but you can't be part of this group. And so what I ended up with was just a phenomenal group of engineers, um, dedicated, just so earnest about wanting to do the right thing. That was uh, my big joy there was putting together that group and just watching them work and work with each other.
You may know the American Railway Engineering and Maintenance of Way Association, or AREMA, as the, quote, keepers of the manuals. You may know them as the, quote, people behind the largest annual railroad conference in North America. Heck, you may not know about AREMA at all. This podcast is designed, no pun intended, to change your view of who AREMA is and how AREMA has changed the trajectory of many railway careers over its 100-plus year history. Welcome to Platform Chats with your host, Walt Bleser, where he takes a moment to discuss the impacts AREMA has had on the very people who are proud to be called members. Are you ready to roll with AREMA?
Unabridged Structures is a proud supporter of AREMA and Platform Chats, specializing in innovative and practical solutions for railway and transportation infrastructure. Unabridged Structures brings clarity and creativity to complex structural challenges. Learn more at unabridgedstructures.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Platform Chats. I can't believe it, but I was just looking around and realized that it is officially episode 50, which is crazy to think. This is basically, we're in, I think, season 5 or 6 now. I keep forgetting which season and episodes we're in, but I do keep track of each episode, and that's how we sort through them in the folders. And this one, as I was typing it up, is 50. And so when we were planning this, episode 50, we decided that it would be really cool to bring on a guest that was significant in my career and significant in my life, and I think vice versa. I wanted to dig through the files of who would that person be? Who would be someone that'd be fun to talk to and someone that I go way back with in my career. And so I started thinking about it, and I realized that there was a certain individual that I met back in, believe it or not, 2007 at a railroad bridge engineering course that I was teaching. And we hit it off in that course, and then we spent the next, 10 to 15 years working together on all sorts of stuff from FRA 237 compliance to software programs to bridge inspection to frankly just conversations around how to make our industry a better place to work. And I think that really was the theme that I was thinking about when we wanted to record this. Is a lot of our relationship was developed over just trying to make the workplace better and the individuals we work with better, and how do we continue that for the next generation. So that's a really big intro, and I pumped her up really well. So Anamaria Bonilla was the chief
No
engineer.
pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. She retired last summer, and she retired as chief engineer at Metro North Railroad in New York City, MTA, Metro North Railroad, if you will. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to her and welcome her to the show. Anamaria, it's so good to have you on. I'm stoked that you are on for the anniversary, if you want to call it anniversary, episode number 50. But if you could just start, I just pumped you up pretty good, but I'd
Yeah,
love
really. My head's in the clouds here. My gosh.
if you could start by just kind of talking, how in the heck did you get into the industry? Like, bring us up to like maybe even when you and I met in '07, and we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. No, in '07, you were teaching a great class for AREMA on bridge engineering, of course. That's both of our backgrounds. So, but how I got to bridge engineering, it's I've had a couple of careers along the way. It's coming from Queens, New York, which I recommend everybody visit Queens, New York, because it is like the foodie capital of the world. You could get the travel the world right in Queens by itself. A great place to grow up in the 70s, you know. So, but I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school, so I just took a part-time job as a carpenter's helper for the summer, and then that led into just being a carpenter for a couple of years, which was out on Long Island, out in the Suffolk County, Long Island. And then from there, it was just like, okay, around I had a an early midlife crisis, saying, well, I can't do this the rest of my life. I got to go back to school. So went back to Queens, started at Queensboro Community College, started in a pre-engineering program, and from there I said, okay, well, this is good for me, going from carpentry to engineering. A lot of structures stuff, very relatable, and I was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to go to Cooper Union.
Oh
Bes-
yes, Cooper
and
Union. That
yeah,
I
the Cooper Union.
we're going to take a detour. We're going to take an off ramp here.
Yeah,
I don't think a lot of people outside of the tri-state region know what that is. If I remember right, did you pay tuition or is that a free college?
that is completely tuition free. At the time that I went, I'm an oldie, so I went. It's completely tuition free. They kind of went through a wave there of, oh, we might have to start charging tuition. There was a huge uproar from the alumni group, and the alumni had put together a group to say, look, do we really need to do this? And so I believe they're on the path now to going back to tuition free. Um, I haven't been up on that recently, but I believe they're on that path again.
So you had
So
to apply, though. I'm assuming.
had to apply. They take a lot of things into account. The thing that is nice is that they're investing a lot in you, so they want to make sure you are going to participate in that profession that they're giving you a degree in, and not giving. I mean, yeah, they're giving you the tuition, but you got to earn that degree. Let me tell you, I was a an average student there. There's so many smart kids there, but you really had to apply yourself. I mean, some of the smart kids there, Westinghouse Award winners or something. But if they weren't on board with really buckling down and applying themselves, they did not succeed. And I was at that time in my life where I was just like, I got to graduate here. That is my job, and I was focused.
That's
So
awesome.
so I did get through it.
How big is like a graduating class from that place?
Oh gosh, the graduating class. Well, the entire school, I believe, is like 1,100.
Okay. Okay. So
Four engineering disciplines, and then an art school and an architecture school, which are not as large, but maybe that's 100 students or something. I'm not too sure. But the four disciplines, they each have go through all the grades, and then you have about 25 kids in each class. So
okay.
you're with that entire class for your 4 years there, and you become very close friends. Very tight.
And that was founded by Peter Cooper, and I
Mr.
believe
Peter Cooper, yes,
right. He was an inventor, right?
one of the old statesmen of New York City, certainly contributed a lot to it. Yes, he was a self taught inventor. He started in the carriage trade as an apprentice. And from there, he went on to creating a better glue that could be produced in New York City rather than importing it from Europe, which
Mm.
at that time, we had the raw resources here, but they went over to Europe to become the product, and then we bought them back, which was a nice business model. But Mr. Cooper set out to create his own products here, and the start of that was glue. And he went on to quite a few other things. He developed the Tom Thumb locomotive.
There we go.
He got into dabbled in the steel industry. He was an inventor through many things.
And a
The
philanthropist.
school newspaper is called Jello because he's given some sort of credit to developing Jello as a dessert. And him and his wife, actually, I got to give his wife some credit there.
So
And he was involved in the things of developing New York City, the reservoir project going up to Croton.
mm,
Uh, they had to do better than the reservoir that used to be at 42nd Street, which is now the library. So they tore that down, and because New York City was a hopping place and lots of people moving in, you know. So they had to get some better water resource. So he was involved in that committee. He was involved in a lot of things. Really a great man. Um, Saw that New York would need the developing country would need engineers, and that's what he dedicated the school to, the Union of Arts and Engineering.
that's awesome. That's like so he was doing STEM before people called it STEM. He was,
Totally,
and
totally.
to see to not only be an inventor like that, to continually repeat successful inventions is cool, but then to have the vision, the philanthropic side of it, to uh, provide tuition free education for over 150 years. I did do, I'm not going to lie to you. I cheated a little. I did a little background on this one.
Uh,
Is pretty awesome. I mean, well, it's just it's so unique, and it's a big unique part of your story because I think that's probably what took you to. Well, it gave you the passion and the fire to give back to the next generation or generations.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. He wanted to create something that would make society better, and he said, give back, contribute. This is why he's planting all the little seeds, so we have to go go on, become a tree and plant our own little seeds. This is what it's all about, and that's how you create a stronger society.
I agree. Well, let's talk about how that evolved for you because I know you left Cooper Union. I believe you worked as a consultant for a minute. And
Yes.
then when did you join Metro North?
Yeah. Well, I had was fortunate to get a summer internship with a consultant, and then they offered me a full time job. So at least I had that weight off my shoulders upon graduation. I had a job, went into my degree. My major was structural engineering. So the degree is actually a Bachelor of Engineering of Civil Engineering, but my discipline was structural engineering. So, doing inspections, studies, and working in an office, which was not for me. So I started looking for a job as soon as I took my PE test. I took the PE test and was interviewing for jobs, and was fortunate to land a construction engineer job with Metro North Railroad. I said,
Okay.
yes, working for a railroad, that's for me. I'm going to be out in the field. I don't need to be hyper polished because that wasn't me either. I can just be out there putting the stuff together, and being directly involved. So that was definitely my sort of thing.
So when was that roughly?
That was oh 02. Oh let me think. Oh my gosh.
So after 9/11?
Yeah, oh 02.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so post 9/11,
I had
and then
yes, I had my PE. Well, yes, post 9/11, because
okay,
I was involved in just a volunteer in going to the steel yards to pick out items that would be of interest to study for uh,
that's
for the
right.
standards folks. So some pieces that we flagged were shipped up to Chicago for them to study.
Mm.
But but yeah, that was the start of it there.
So in 2007, I remember. So we were teaching a course on University of Wisconsin Madison's railroad bridge engineering course. Mr. Chris Brown, who works for a
Hmm.
company called HNTB. At the time, I also worked with him, and we taught that course in Philadelphia. And I remember you took the course because I remember specifically you and your colleague Ziona Rubin, I believe, and
Yes,
both of you were there, and you had realized both of you realized that you were entering a organization that was truly going through generational change, where it seemed like a lot of folks that had been there a very long time were on the brink of retiring and taking a lot of their knowledge out the door with them. And it seemed like your goal was to somewhat to keep that from happening, and to and you did. You asked a lot of questions after the course, but it seemed like you recognized that earlier than a lot of people. Of like, hey, it's 2007. In 5 to 10 years, these guys are gone, and I'm going to be sitting
yes.
here running this place. is
Yeah,
that
they
is
were
that
prepping
accurate?
for that. It was a big they were prepping for the turnover in 2010 to 12. Just the huge turnover, retirees going, and so uh Ziona, she had the advantage of she had a degree in structural engineering and a master's in mechanical engineering, but not specific to railroads. And I was involved in structural engineering on the highway side, again not specific to railroads. So we really had to get ourselves on board very quickly to the railroad way of doing things without getting a lot of mentoring ourselves. Um, at that time.
Yeah, and I remember that. That's the interesting confluence, because you were doing that at the same exact time that the FRA came out with their bridge safety standards in 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there, which is when
Yeah,
you and
10.
I started talking. Does that sound right?
I think 10 is when it was finalized.
And
Because
this
of
was the
course it takes a while to get it finalized. Yeah.
That's right, because it was part of the Rail Safety Act that Bush signed back in 2008. But I remember that your vision, you were very unique in that you saw this as an opportunity to document and create a bridge management plan for Metro North Railroad that had, well, frankly, that the organization had never seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they were relying a lot on um their inventory was between New York and Connecticut. I think it's around 1,000 bridges or something like that. And it was on a spreadsheet. It was
Yeah.
on a spreadsheet. When I got there, the inspection reports did not have photos. It was just a written report by the inspectors for doing the best they could with the tools that they were given. So, so just getting them a camera, getting them, computers to develop an inspection report where they can have multiple pages, not just a hard copy page. It, it, it was a quite a turnover. So you had to really ramp it up, at least on the highway side, being involved on the highway side with the Federal Highway Administration. They had a format. They had the photos had to be color, had to be dated. You could not use old photos. So really, that was a fortunate background to have going into having this turnover at a railroad. And
Yeah.
it was they were reportable items, and they were being told they were delivering what they were being asked to deliver. But it was just like, in order for us to maintain the assets, we really had to up our game. And that's what we did, and plenty there wanted to keep it at, you know the spreadsheets, the written reports, a checklist kind of inspection deal. And it's just like, no, we really have to up our game here, because these regulations are coming, and seeing how the highways did it, it's just like, this is more the way that we have to go, rather than just saying, well, yeah, we kind of got pieces here and pieces there and pieces everywhere. So we had all the pieces, but they were so scattered, you needed it in one location. So, and that's what one of the phrases that comes to me that you guys would use was a single source of truth.
Yeah, and that's
That was
where
your
you and I
phrase.
really consummated our relationship with in the rail space. It was just the building of this program that HNTB. It's a proprietary software for them at this time,
Yep.
and it was so cool because we took Metro North from frankly, from the 20th century, and moved it forward and created that database. And I remember all of your plans were paper. They were scattered amongst, obviously, in Grand
Yeah.
Central Terminal you had the plan room,
The
but then I
plan room.
remember there were a couple of engineers who had their offices stacked to the ceiling with drawings.
Yes. Yes, it was the plan room was one location, but a couple of the engineers that, instead of going back and forth to the plan room, they just kept the plans in their office. And so it was an original plan sometimes, and just phenomenal, pieces of art from 140 years ago. But again, just a piece of paper somewhere that we had to get in digital format, or risk losing it.
Yep, and I will say that job, right? Just talking about that, I remember we had an intern, and I always
A
giggle because
brave intern.
yes, you go to career fairs and you show pictures of really cool bridges and amazingly high profile projects, and then the poor guy got his internship, and we said, Ian, you're going to spend the entire summer in Grand Central Terminal, and you're going to scan 10,000 documents or whatever it was.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Which was a monster of an undertaking. And that got
Yeah,
done. And now everything's in one
yeah,
spot, your inspection reports. But I think the other
yeah.
thing is beyond, which is, that was 15, 16 years ago now. So I would say most railroads are probably there, if not all of them. At the time, it was pretty cutting edge because we started using iPads. They had just come out in 2010, and we were using those for inspection.
Yep,
And then on the actual bridge management plan, aka the big book that we created, you were hyper focused on the different classifications and criteria of the employees because you saw so much turnover. Again, you have such a unique situation, right? At Metro North, you have public funding, private funding. You're under the scrutiny of a lot of eyeballs, and you've got
yep,
union workers and non-union workers. And I remember, like, for a bridge inspector, you sat down and said, in 15, 20 years from now when I'm gone, I think my bridge inspectors need to have, x certain criteria. And if I remember right, you were still sending them to NBIS. Is that correct for that
yes,
certification? Okay.
yes, to be a certified bridge inspector, which was a turnover at that time. I mean, it was a transitional time. So we had, structural engineers or iron workers, no, I'm sorry, structural welders or iron workers that would become the bridge inspectors because they were familiar with the steel bridges. We didn't have to worry so much about the stone arches and that sort of thing, but they inspected them. but their own expertise was in that steel work, but they were not certified bridge inspectors. So that was the move towards having those team leaders to be certified in order to know not just the importance of documentation, but how to go about that documentation. So that's why we were sending them to the highway inspection class that New York State DOT was had that open for us to, they had a number of slots, and we would just use those slots. But they were very nice in offering those slots to us, and we would send those guys. You
That's
know,
awesome.
so
And
so
same
that
with it.
so yes, so that it was just ensuring that when they retired, or the next role of folks that come in, they understood these positions had to have these qualifications.
Which is so that thought process is, I know today I feel like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But at the time it was, I mean, what we were doing at that time felt a little bit revolutionary in what we were doing in that specific part of the world, in that specific industry, and for Metro North. I mean, we were that was a really big step forward for that whole group, and they're still using that program
Yeah.
today. Correct?
Oh, it's become quite a program now, because we've gone from bridges to uh, and those bridges were classified again by span and by track, which was not done before. So before we could have had like a 12 span um, truss, or structure, a bridge structure that was on basically determined to be one bridge. But now we it was split up into those 12 different spans.
That's right.
So yeah, it was very important to have all of that itemized and segmented, and then from there, it went on to the drainage structures, the retaining walls, the transmission poles, the transmission towers. It's I mean, since we had the layout of the railroad there as a GIS map, we could put any asset on that map, identify it, add files to that folder, to that pinpoint, and just it was incredible and continues to be.
So
And
we
then
that Go
Grand
ahead.
Central was its own beast,
Right.
that whole scan and everything. That was its
That's
own
right.
beast.
Because you took Grand Central and you scanned the entire train shed. I remember that. And and for those that don't know, and let's just take 10 seconds here. For those outside the New York metro region, or maybe you visited a couple times and done touristy things, uh, the history here is really interesting. So Grand Central Terminal, all of those trains run to the north. Well, why don't you tell them? Why isn't Grand Central and Penn Station connected? That's always a fun discussion I have with tourists.
Well, you just have to go out to Hudson Line mile post 12 and come back, and you can connect to Penn Station. That's easy enough, right?
Right, that's right.
But
Yeah, for the
yeah, two different locations in Manhattan. They didn't dig that tunnel through the bedrock of Manhattan, so so Penn Station just goes west basically, and you had the West Side Railroad that went down, but Grand Central was in the middle of Manhattan, and those were the commuter lines. The Hudson River Railroad, Harlem River Railroad, and New Haven Railroad connects up in Woodlawn to the Harlem line, and then comes into Grand Central. So Grand Central, the building, a proper historic structure that was taken care of by a different group. But I'm talking about the train shed area, which
Yep.
handles the tracks and the towers that were under there, that headquarters for the different people. So so that we had scanned. There's an
Okay.
upper level, a lower level, and a tunnel, and that created as much as much terabytes as the entire rest of the territory. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was all New York Central, and then
Yep.
Penn Station was all Pennsylvania Railroad, which were competing railroads. Which
Yeah.
Pennsylvania Railroad then also acquired what we now call Long Island Railroad to the east, and now we have Amtrak, New Jersey Transit to the west, um, and you've got all the Metro North trains are going out of New York
Yep.
Central, aka GCT. So that's part of the story, right? Is you inherited. Uh, I don't need to take an hour on the history here, but when the Metropolitan railroads were created, aka Metro North and Long Island Railroad and MBTA and others, there was just a hodgepodge of all these. There was a large family tree. How about that? Of railroads that all came together that all of a sudden were under your purview. It was not. It was quite a knot of paper trails and plans, and so your job was to get all that in one central location. So when
Yeah.
you got that done, and let's talk about kind of the just
Well,
right here before
poor
you,
Ian
yeah,
got that done. Yeah.
he ain't got that done. I want to focus a little bit on kind of your legacy here. And after this was completed, this really was obviously this was a shining star in your career. But before you retired, it seemed like you did spend a lot of time on creating a really great engineering group. And
Yes.
maybe speak a little bit to the importance of mentorship.
Oh my goodness. Yes. The well, when I got to Metro North, I was the only structural engineer in in my work group. There was one engineer above me who was also a PE. So that was it as far as the track and structures. Well, the one track guy had a PE, I believe, and but he retired before me. Um, so that's when I got there. So eventually we had to develop a an engineering group, and eventually that we had that opportunity, and positions were created, given to me to create a group, and hiring out for those people between um, the sources we had for those people were our own junior engineers, um, and hiring from the outside. So the junior engineers go through a rotation at Metro North. They spend about 18 months going around the railroad, learning railroad things. So they were offered jobs, and then some outside folks were offered jobs. But to really get to having a great group, I mean, you have to, weed the garden every now and then, unfortunately. And that just it made the group stronger because you had the truly dedicated people and the smart people. I mean, if you are into your discipline and you want to be a professional, I'm going to be behind you 100%. If you're not showing that level of effort, I'm sorry, but you can't be part of this group. And so what I ended up with was just a phenomenal group of engineers, um, dedicated, just so earnest about wanting to do the right thing. That was uh, my big joy there was putting together that group and just watching them work and work with each other.
So that is, I had a feeling that's what you were going to say. Is your true legacy was building that group because you speak highly of your team, and I know, yeah, it's tough, right? Because sometimes you have to make tough decisions, like you said. But I just remember upon your leaving, I feel like you felt that your concerns of back in 20, if we come full circle, right, when we were talking about 2007, 8, 9, 10, there was a concern about turnover, and there was a concern about people walking out the door with knowledge. Well, here we are in 2026, and you walked out the door in 2025. But it
Yeah.
sounds to me like you feel pretty good about who you left behind. Yes?
I left, they were smarter than me and better than me. So I was more than happy with the way I was leaving things. I was always amazed how some some folks are really hesitant about hiring people that are smarter than them. But it's just like, no, that's exactly who you want. It's because eventually you got to hand it over to them, and you can't micromanage the world. You know, so you got to have people that are smart, intelligent, that they, if they can research something for themselves and draw some options, that's all you can hope for. And if they're honest about wanting to do good work, follow the codes and the rules and everything, there, that's the best. That is the absolute best.
Well, and you walked the walk. You didn't just talk the talk. I mean, I remember for years you took your own money and you would fly out here to Colorado and go to the Pueblo. We'd walk the track together at the
Yep.
research. You would go to the AREMA meetings and get involved there. You did, and just so we're clear, everybody, this was not Anamaria sending in her expense report that got paid. A lot of this was her own personal money to educate
Yeah,
herself, and that's
initially, yes.
yeah, that's how I remember it. Maybe it's changed,
Yes.
but
No, well, it did change eventually.
okay,
Um, and a lot more people were allowed to become members of AREMA
good.
and attend things. But that didn't happen until I believe, like 2014. Metro North really had to get on the stick there and up their game again, and which they did then. And so they were allowed to travel to the conventions, be part of these committees in which they could talk to other professionals that are looking at the same problems that they're having. And it's just like, yeah, I'm having this problem. How do you keep your drainage system? How do you keep that inventory? How do you, what do you do for your folks here, there? You got to talk to other railroad people in order to do that. And you got a wealth of knowledge because you have huge railroads. It's yeah, I'm reminded of that poster with west of the Hudson River, the New York City mindset, west of the Hudson River, you don't have much, but what is that? A New Yorker poster, yeah.
It's it
But
that
it's
is hanging in my living room. My aunt had that hanging in her Manhattan apartment,
That's
and
right.
it's
That's right.
yeah, it's basically the view is west of the Hudson. There's not much going on, uh, but I will say
So,
that you
but you
your
got
humbleness.
a wealth of information out there. You got
That's right.
huge, big railroads, real freight guys that just want to, once they get a sense of you, they'll talk
Yes,
to you forever about railroads. And
which we talk a
that's
lot about that on this podcast, right? And the purpose of AREMA is just to share that knowledge. That's how it was formed, and so I feel like you lived and breathed that back in the day. I remember coming out to when you would come out to what is now called MXV, but
mhm,
you connected with the chief engineer of Union Pacific,
yep,
BNSF, CSX, Norfolk Southern, and I remember you would ask me for their email addresses and occasionally, and then you guys would chat about all kinds of stuff, and they would actually take the time, and they were busy people, right? And I remember seeing majorly long responses to your questions. Like they did not have to do that, but it showed a really cool camaraderie. But it did. It required you to take off an ego, if whatever term you want to use, and put it to the side and be like, "Hey, I'm trying to make this place better."
right,
And that's a really, I hate to say rare, but it's cool because everything you've done in your career is now a legacy at Metro North, and I think I think that's something to be proud of. I mean, let me ask you a question. Would you rather still be working, or are you enjoying your retirement?
No, I'm enjoying my retirement. I made my contribution. Very happy to have done that. But it was hard work, and but I am just enjoying myself. Taking care of. I got 1 acre to take care of that. I'm planting lots of native plants and tilling under the grass lawn that was surrounding the entire house,
Mm,
and just putting up a lot more native plants, flowers, making it a nice bee and bird friendly and wildlife friendly location.
I love it. I enjoy our relationship. I enjoy our friendship. I know that this fall AREMA is going to be in Kansas City, so if you get a wild hair, there's going to be some presentations about. I believe there's a good presentation coming up on Park Avenue Viaduct.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so MTA did submit on. I think a couple different folks submitted on that. I'm excited to
Oh,
see.
right, right. The viaduct. The
Yep, yep.
viaduct. Yeah, no, that was an excellent project. They prefabbed those pieces of the superstructure piece while they were building, putting the foundation in place, piles and everything, and just when you spend enough money on a crane, you can move some big pieces.
That's
And
true.
but it worked. Then they did a phenomenal job there on the
Well,
viaduct, which
that was cool.
desperately needed to get replaced. Yes.
Yes, it did. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I really appreciate, like everything I said, I appreciate the fact that you and I got to work together for so long. I think it's cool. You left behind a really cool legacy for Metro North, and I think you inspired a lot of engineers and a lot of female engineers as well. I know you were Woman of the Year. We could go on and on and on, but just thank you for taking the time to sit down with us at AREMA today and having this conversation.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Walt. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
You
I
take care.
enjoyed it. All right.
Thank you for rolling with AREMA on today's episode of Platform Chats. For further information about AREMA, please visit arema.org or contact us at info@arema.org.